In this lecture, we will talk about Hypershade. Hypershade is the place where we'll create all the materials and textures for our objects. We can access Hypershade by going to Window, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. Hypershade has got this work area which has got two tabs, the top one and the bottom one. The top area is where we can access the materials, textures, utilities, rendering, cameras, and so on and so forth. And the bottom is the work area where we can pick up any of these materials and we can work. The left area is where we can create materials and textures. Now I'm talking about two things, materials and textures. Let's see what are the difference between materials and textures. Materials basically talks about what kind of object we're creating. And textures talks about what color it has and what kind of texture it has. Examples for materials are like plastic or metal or glass. And textures is just about the color and texture it has. Now let's talk about how to create a new material, a new texture, and assign them to an object. So I will create a sphere. Go to Create, Polyprimitives, and choose Sphere. I will press keyboard shortcut 5 to make it in shaded mode. Now by default, any object that you create will be automatically assigned with Lambert 1. So Lambert is basically a non-reflective material. For this example, I want to choose to make this object to be a bit reflective. So let's imagine something like a plastic ball which has got shiny surfaces. So I will go to the surfaces. So to choose a particular material, I will choose Fong. So Fong has got a very nice highlight area that is called specular area, which would look more like a plastic ball. So that created a Fong material, and now I have to choose a texture. So I'll go to 2D textures and I'm going to pick up the cloth texture. So now I have created a material and a texture. Now all the texture will also come with a placement tool that will decide how the texture is going to be placed on the surface. Now all I have to do is connect the texture with the material. I can do that by pressing the middle mouse key and clicking and dragging onto the material. I will choose color in this example so that the texture gets applied to the material as a color. But you can see that it is not updated on the object yet. That is because this Fong is not connected to this object or mesh. Now, so far it is still connected with the Lambert. So what we have to do is we have to assign this new material, that is Fong material, to this object. We can do that in two different ways. We can either middle mouse click and drag onto the object, or we can right click and choose Assign Material to Selection. But for doing this, you have to make the object a selection. So let me click on the object to select it, right click and choose Assign Material to Selection. So that also applies the Fong onto the object. Now just because the Fong is being applied, you can see that it has a little bit of highlight here, but still the texture is not yet visible. To make the texture visible in the viewport, we will have to press 6, or we can go up here and click on this little texture button. So that makes the texture visible in our viewport. This is one way to create a new material and apply a texture onto the object. I'll go ahead and delete this entire thing. As you can see, the texture is being lost here, so that is why it became green. Now to fix this, we can just apply the default material. Another easy way to create a new material and apply a texture to it without the help of the Hypershade. I'll go ahead and minimize the Hypershade. I can select the object, right click and hold, and go down to choose Assign New Material. So this will give us all the choices of materials that we can create. This basically includes both the Maya's default software render and the Mental Ray materials. I'll go ahead and choose Fong, creates a Fong material and applies it to the object. And it also opens up the attribute editor where it shows the attributes of Fong material. And down there you will find a color attribute. Now all I have to do is apply the texture through this color attribute. I can do that by going to this options, and that opens up all the textures that we have. So I'll choose cloth. So as you can see, the cloth is being applied here, and it shows the attributes of cloth directly in our attribute editor. So this is a second way to apply textures onto objects. So that concludes this lecture.